this right here, this absolute relic of a Tumblr post from April 28th, 2015. This was made the same weekend I turned 20 and the same weekend I forced myself to finish chapter 1 of Leftovers. Well, I'm 30, Leftovers is 10, and I want to yap about it. But first, before I can get into any of that, I wanted to say thank you to the apparently 40-something subscribers I got because of the Arcane videos I just put up. Not on my 2025 bingo card, but like neither were those videos, so I guess it's just surprises all around. Then if you want to check out my comic, please feel free to look in the pinned comment below for links to where you can find it. That said, let's get into the story of how I essentially $5 in a suitcase my way into becoming a comic artist. Origins through Chapter 1. Leftovers began as a concept centered around partnershiping, following each villain team of delinquents, watching Maxie and Archie's dynamic develop. They were considered the trash of society, but would heal the world bit by bit. It was essentially an enemies to lovers fic, but across a team instead of just a random couple. Thus, the name Leftovers was born, named after the item. Obviously, the concept we got today is nowhere near the one mentioned, so what happened? Well, while the original heart and shipping angle was chosen after reading this amazing fanfic called Infamy, if you know you know, and being inspired to do my own world building and expanding on the characters of the Hoenn region, my discovery that people actually make comics of their Nuzlocke runs through stories like Alterity and Chiaki's Nuzlocke, the latter of which had a death that hurt me so bad it still sits with me today, ended up swaying me more towards not only making my story in the form of a comic, but also pulling out and taking a more general single focus character journey approach to this Hoenn story. And that single character was none other than Asadi, who originally went by Pokemi in this big ass sketchbook from 2015, where I draw scenes inspired by my Omega Ruby playthrough and, well, other shenanigans. Now, Asadi is actually an anagram of my name Deja, but of course, I'm not about that self-insert core, so I had no other choice but to revoke her tooth gap privileges. Outside of that, we looked virtually the same. There's also Sammy, but that was a given considering Sammy's been my Startermon ride or die since playing Ruby back when I was 10. Now, on to the process of actually trying to figure out how the hell making a comic works. I looked at some resources for help, heard, you should probably do thumbnails in the script, and said fuck a script, we raw dog ideas around here. Spent January through April on thumbnails and 12 pages of a beautiful 11x17 first draft. Then realized I was on a roll with absolutely no destination. And maybe they were cooking on a script idea actually. See, I have a shit track record with starting and abandoning projects, so I almost gave up, but decided it was April, so why not give myself the gift of accomplishment and finish literally anything? Like, just a crumb. And hey, I'm watching Steven Universe now. Now that sounds random, but you have no idea how much Steven Universe is packed into Leftovers DNA. I'm talking whatever I was on trying to copy the sticky note storyboard thing with my thumbnails, writing in an episodic format, the fucking mouths I'm sure you'll never be able to unsee now. And my birthday's on a Saturday, and my roommate's away for once. So I locked myself in my room and managed to finish 15 pages in 3 days. Wild behavior. I was not familiar with my game, but I sure as hell was proud. And here's a post to prove that. Pause to read. Chapter 2! Like the stubborn, hyperfixated goblin I was, I went to town on the most concept art I'd ever done for a project up to that point. Because this wasn't just any ordinary project, this was an improvement project. I mean, what can I say? I learned more in the trenches than in the textbook. Chapter 1 looked kind of dull, so let's saturate that shit. Also, what are the trees in Hoenn even? I don't know, but I'm trying to draw the environment better, so I guess I better find out. Is Asadi a main character, or is she just a random? She got the Markman treatment, and she even meets Steven on some main character shit. I don't know. And no, this won't make sense until later. And speaking of Steven, I can't be the only one who's never been attracted to him or found him interesting, right? So I have no clue how to write him here, but apparently he's attracted to all genders, and Asadi is a gender. Sammy is my timid baby boy, but I have no idea what to do with him outside of having him meet Lonan. Also, yeah, so I panicked, realized the original meaning of Leftovers no longer applies here, and made some shit up on the spot at the end of the chapter. Also, Mr. Reicher is actually a kind man, but my dumbass gave him the Mega Knight glasses glare and the shady shadow, and now he's on a watch list. Chapter 3. Oh, okay. Let me just rip the band-aid off. Minor trigger warnings and a timestamp on screen. Okay, we good? Right. Let's talk about Asadi's dark place, aka what was unknowingly a major instance of projection on my part. So, where to start? Right. 2015 was and still is the worst year of my life. I'm talking a homebody roommate who's deprived me of privacy so heinously that I'm out here making forts under the bed just to get some time to myself. We've got college putting me in a financial chokehold on some boy, this ain't freshman year no more, and holding my classes hostage. And then, most distressingly, I'm simultaneously dealing with the active sabotaging of the relationship between me and the most important person in my life by their partner, while this important person is also dealing with emotional abuse, gaslighting, and religious brainwashing, with me being 3 hours away and constantly worried about their well-being. I didn't want to be in college, I didn't want to go home during school breaks. It got to the point where I was like, I could just log off. Then, in my contemplation, the next thought was, yeah, but if I do that, who's gonna finish my comic though? Leftovers might have actually saved my life. And from that point on, I realized just how therapeutic it was to be actively progressing on something instead of just giving up. Also, Asadi was designed around what was the longest hair I'd ever had at the time, but I ended up getting so stressed that it all fell out and has never been that long since. Okay, on to chapter 3 itself, which was entirely colored while listening to You Know You Like It for like 8+ hours. Maybe that's why my attempts at soft painterly shading were literally just cell shading in Photoshop but blurring it to hell. And maybe that's why we got cinematics in this bitch now? Okay, red overlay. This chapter was also my first time drawing a lot of the Pokemon here, but with that Deja flair. And I can assure you that there's a reason why Linoon, the badger weasel, looks like a dog with nail extensions, and it has absolutely nothing to do with me being a veteran Wolfaboo. Is Asadi a main character though? I don't know how much of the game I'm gonna follow. I mean, my Omega Ruby run wasn't a Nuzlocke, so I'm really freeballing here. Maybe I should veer off a little more. Hey, not too fast now. Go on and get your ass that special elemental thing Poochyena captured. Oh yeah, Kiba acquired, chapters 4 and 5. God bless my Lord and Savior Manga Studio 5, along with my new friends Blend Brush and Reference Layer for allowing me to achieve a painted brush look that doesn't look like I smeared Vaseline on the page. Oh my god, baby's first POV switch! It's a cool ass Poochyena transition too. I worked hard on drawing each and every action scene in these chapters. Look at them! You know I'm feeling myself, can't tell me shit. Kiba might have been acquired last chapter, but she makes her grand spectacular debut here. Acting perhaps a little too flirtatious while also bouncing off of Sammy so well that she actually ends up helping me find my footing with his personality, solely through writing the contrast between them. Oh, Maeve here? Yeah, Asadi is not the main character. She is but one peon in a sea of randoms. And yes, I am absolutely reaching back into my OG Leftovers concept bag to commit to the idea of Sonder. Put the definition on the screen, please. Now, let's go through Asadi's lack of main character feats over chapters 4 and 5, just so y'all know I'm serious. She doesn't help Wally catch his Pokemon. She doesn't fend off the grunts in the woods. She doesn't escort the Devon worker or get Steven's letter. She doesn't apprehend the grunts in Rust Surf Tunnel. Hell, she doesn't even get a proper interview with Gabby and Ty. And nothing against my girl Asadi, I've never felt like a main character either, so I'm just out here writing like this for the love of the game. Fun fact, Ty does not look like that. Ty from Leftovers looked like Ty, my friend from IRL, and it took me years to realize I had fucked up and conflated the two. Also, another fun fact, Asadi is only covering her head here because I'm black and we cover our head during the rain. But I didn't realize it was to protect our expensive ass box perms or relaxers until I went natural in 2023. And Asadi has neither of those, so glad I cut that shit right the fuck out because it was definitely gonna conflict with my world building later on. Chapter 6! $5 in a suitcase in your way into becoming a comic artist and then maintaining a 6-chapter buffer is insane behavior. But I did it. This is the last chapter in a buffer though. I'm sure I'll be fine. Oh yeah, and here's a post about me being absolutely flabbergasted that I made it this far. It's first semester of junior year, thus allowing me to continue my annual habit of paying $24K a semester to teach myself art. And this time, we're focusing on visual development, character design, etc. All that post-grad career type shit I'm supposed to be aiming for. And I got a job as a graphic designer and print shop worker on campus now. So yes, I will be taking advantage. What do I want to improve on this time? How about we put some Pokemon in this Pokemon-ass world? Also, if the environment is dark as shit, why aren't the speech bubbles dark as shit? Also, let's soft launch the 2-language system of Trainer Tongue and Pokespeak with Pico, so when we hard launch it with Hoenn later, and Asadi's surprise, we could just blame it on her being sheltered instead of me waffling on a pretty big narrative decision that probably should have been fleshed out before the beginning of the series. Listen, I'm only exposing myself in 4K because I find it interesting to hear about scrapped concepts or new implementations and prototypes and betas, etc. And I think of it kind of like that. Also, way back when, I made Gajinka of Sammy and Kiba, and then later Hoenn, and they were babies. Like, I'm talking small. With Sammy being the youngest, and Asadi being less of a trainer and more of a babysitter. And that's still a part of the story up to chapter 7. It's also why Hoenn and Kiba refer to Sammy as kid. I mean, they still do it now, but it's more of a term of endearment. Side tangent for side quests. Now, it wouldn't be me if I didn't make arbitrary rules for myself, like, number 1, no remaking or restarting pages. Number 2, always keep a schedule and a buffer. And number 3, no hiatuses if I can help it. And these rules were to be respected. That's why I immediately broke the last 2. Hey, so here's a little Kiba pic to announce a hiatus I've got to take to finish being a junior in college and all that shit. Also, the next chapter is going to be opening with Kiba having found Steven for Asadi, and I'm not confident if that's clear or not, but I am fully confident in taking Leftovers seriously. Only took 6 chapters and 90 plus pages to get there, but we ball. That's why I got me a reserved student gallery and set up a Leftovers exhibit to let people passing by know that cartoon art is, in fact, valid, which is an idea itself fueled solely by spite because What do you mean the art building tour guide of this college I'm supposed to be going to just straight up says comic work is looked down on here? Any man and his dog can make a comic. Like, are you dead ass? Oh look, my first extra comic, so I can maybe focus on some other stories outside of just small transitions in another chapter. Thank God I'm not going with that original black, white, the color overlay version because it honestly looked like straight booty cheeks. And also, is that my ghost son? Also, speech bubble heads have now been unlocked, so not everybody has to be in a panel to be talking. And yeah, that might be one of the most basic manga and comic tools in the tool set, but improvement is improvement, and we take what we can get in the Picard Doodles household. Chapter 7. So I think not having a buffer might be a problem. This chapter is a goddamn artistic identity crisis. The first 5 pages have that traditionally lined and digitally colored style, albeit to great success as far as the C-Fest vibes are concerned. Page 6 is a hot ass mess because I couldn't leave well enough alone and tried the black, white, to color overlay method again. Page 7 just slides into vaporwave aesthetic real quick. Don't really have much to say about this outside of it being short-lived in comic but survived in a lot of my artwork from the time. And then page 8 onwards is actually cool. Got my little 19 days manhwa inspiration panels and shading lines, and we chillin'. Now, chapter 7 is the first instance of a highly anticipated scene. A scene I've been excited to get to ever since the early days of Leftovers development. And that's Sammy's evolution scene. That shit has been swirling around in my head forever now, and it's intended to be one of the first moments of Sammy taking initiative and getting a bit more active in situations where he or Asadi may be at risk. Especially against this particular Golbat, who's the main one responsible for separating the two. Sammy also actually learns Mudshot here while he's using his water gun, but ended up going a bit overboard on the glow, so the slight bit of mud there is happens to be washed out. And it might be senior year, but I'm finna fit Leftovers into this shit one way or another, even if I have to use it for my thesis, which is exactly what I'm about to do. Team Asadi, it's time to get redesigned. Asadi is now actually as plus size as she should be, sorta. And Sammy's my little sea otter boy now. They're both based on water drops, but Sammy's got more foundation than Asadi, who is awkwardly stacked like that one brick house that would actually get blown over. Kiba's got sharp edges and triangles like the little speedy bullet she is. Also, are Poochiana's dogs or hyenas? Because the name is giving both. I don't care. I'm doing both. And she's got retractable claws because, to my surprise, hyena are actually more closely related to felines. And Hoenn. Hoenn is a sumo wrestling rabbit who is square because of the appearance of stability and defensiveness and other backstory shit I can't say. And what even is a square Makuhita? Of course, all the designs would go on to be redefined later. And yes, I did make these figures mainly for our BFA gallery for the extra bit of interactivity to go alongside the sketchbook. And yes, I am aware Asadi and Hoenn are in worse shape than our economy. Team Asadi is no longer a bunch of little babies now. They're all Asadi's peers, doing real peer shit. Sammy's not a little timid shy boy, but he is an introverted individual. There's a difference. Hoenn and Kiba are no longer joined in smart assery. In fact, their smart assness actually clashes, and in my media experience, if a male and female argue, there is some sort of tension there. Fuck me, I'm glad these two didn't go down that path. But if you squint hard enough, you can still see it in the last page of chapter 7. And by squint hard enough, I mean just look at their interaction before they join Asadi and Sammy. Please free me from trope hell. Chapter 7 is a game changer. Not the biggest one, but that shit was still absolutely a shift. At this point, I'm graduating in spring 2017, and it's time for Leftovers to graduate with me. Growing pains. Oh, go to college, get a degree so you can get a good job. Bullshit. Got me and all my college roommates working part-time at a little pizza joint post-grad. Outrunning post-grad depression got so perilous, I had to sit and ask myself, do you really want to move to Cali and work in the animation industry? Is that what success looks like to you as an artist? Honestly, at that point, I realized I just wanted to make a living by drawing. Was that so much to ask? The girl ain't got schoolwork anymore though, so you know I'm running up the leftover sketches in between chapters 7 and 8. I discovered Made with Mischief, an endless canvas program, and definitely made some shit with mischief. Pure diabolical memories tied to that program. That and a ton of leftovers concept art. And that time I even put out chapter 7.5, and the Meanwhile Elsewhere extra. I'm just trying to fill some time while I figure out how to have a buffer again. Holy shit, what's that? I ended up getting a job as a graphic designer at a redemption and vending toy company that fall. Thus, the life of a 9-to-5 worker falls upon me, with a bonus because I fucking love this job. There's just one glaring orange problem. We work almost exclusively in Illustrator, Photoshop's less attractive vector-based cousin. Ugh. Chapter 8. First of all, I've broken up with Tumblr. It's just me and DeviantArt now, which absolutely sounds like a cursed existence these days. Second, chapter 8's entire scripting process is Clown Shoes. The OG script, the last one to ever be done in my handy dandy composition book, ups Asadi's incompetence to a disrespectful degree. How do you fucking forget to do Duford's gym battle and only realize on the boat to Slateport? And why is she still my twin? Then, when I switched to digital scripting for the first time, chapter 8 has fucking 10 drafts, one of which involves Asadi, Celeste, Hazen, Kiba, and Sammy running from a stampede of Agron on some Lion King shit. Sort of a fun fact, back in my composition book script, my rushing of Asadi from Duford to Slateport was most definitely due to one specific specific reason in hindsight. That being my excitement to get Asadi and Vander to meet. Yes, that Vander from a certain chapter coming up, who's actually been a part of Leftovers since its earliest days. In senior year, me and my friends got fed up with final projects and fucked off to a mountain, which was my first time hiking, so give it up to the rocks this chapter. Found out real quick that Mother Nature is cool as shit and peerless as fuck, and I love that about her. Also, what do you mean Granite Cave is a whole ecosystem and not just a game location now? Even got the parting ground where Mons can reunite with their families to let them know they got it out the mud. Literally. Turns out we have slow seasons at work, generally around the holidays and Chinese New Year's when our factories are closed. So you know what I'm doing. I'm working on Leftovers with the quickness. Got the entirety of chapter 8, along with some really nice concept art done that would go on to be lost in the store of 2018 along with my whole ass computer. But the caveat, there's no Clip Studio Paint on my work computer, so we're stuck with the collab between Photoshop and Illustrator, where I have to box Illustrator's brush tool over correction and live paint while I'm doing flats. And judging from how chewy and unnaturally round a lot of the line art in chapter 8 looks, well, Illustrator beat my ass and I'm man enough to admit that. Trainer Troop was a bunch of randoms until I met a bunch of college friends that found out they'd all been friends since elementary school. And first, couldn't be me. Second, that shit was awe-inspiring. And the warm/affection they showed me translated directly to the troop and how they opened Asadi up now that they're actual characters. And I don't know why I'm talking in past tense like I'm not still friends with these people. Also, my youngest cousin around this time is like 15, so off to research 10-year-olds I go. For the kids, I focus on tying each one to a specific characteristic of their age range. I don't remember most of them, but I can tell you that Solana has the 10-year-old characteristic of recognizing rules and the fact that they should be adhered to, while Mikhail, being around 11 to 12-ish, is becoming more aware of his responsibilities and pressures put on him as a quote-unquote big kid. You know what's the most interesting part about making the troop? The way my character design mentality shifts. Group diversity is no longer tied to races. That shit's tied to colors now. I'm slowly trying to pad out my palette, so the troop aren't XYZ race. They're tan and warm peach and cool peach. And also, this shift didn't just stop at character design, it went farther. Why do a one-to-one translation of IRL issues in this fantasy world when I can focus on the fact that y'all have 3-foot-tall bugs and have no other bugs to compare them to, so you just live like shit is sweet? Let's talk about that. We'll get to the class divide plot later. Chapter 8.5. You know, fuck the secret life of pets. What do the adversarial trainers do in their day-to-day lives? Don't worry, don't even answer. I got you. Here's a Dufert comic set on a hot, rainy summer night, brought to all of us by my return to Clip Studio Paint. Thank God. Detroit Become Human is now my new sparkling hyperfixation. Connor is adorable, but you know who's also adorable? Brian Deckard, the man behind the character. He is literally human sunshine. Princely, funny, warm. And I don't usually follow celebrities outside of the things they're in, but I'm hooked on his and Amelia's gaming streams now. And yes, this is relevant to Leftovers, because Brian Deckard single-handedly helped me understand that people like Steven do, in fact, exist in real life. And therefore, I understand it now. I know how Steven Stone moves in the world of Leftovers, which is why I had to make a comic about him and his dragon dad Drake, and the title of this comic, Into the Night, might also be the title of a possible storyline following Steven because I am suddenly very interested in him now. Also, do you see this? Look at this lineup. The first lineup in Leftovers. Now, I just threw some shit together, but that doesn't matter. What does matter is this little tingle in the back of my neck. This little thing that's whispering, hey bitch, maybe try working smarter, not harder. Good golly, Miss Molly, it's chapter 9. Do you know what happened to me back in 2017? Sonic happened to me back in 2017, but the details of that are for another video. Anyway, I say this because I ended up reading a bunch of Sonic fan comics like Ghosts of the Future, and they all really lean heavy into the Archie comic issue format, with covers and everything. And not gonna lie, I fuck with it, solely for each cover being a microcosm of improvement. So chapter 9, go ahead and get a cover. Also, the Sonic franchise is unabashed and unashamed of its influences, and I kind of fuck with that too. So that's why we're getting a JoJo and a DBZ this chapter, mirror panels from each other. And by the way, Brawly is 100% not Sonic coded. Also Sketchfab, 3D, models, ref game strong, so much concept art. Hey, the troop is here to stay this chapter, so let's celebrate with more bright colors and thick lines. And let's have some scenes where the kids bring Asadi into their huge family of friends and Pokemon, giving me one of the most crowded images I've drawn in my life. And stick a quarter up my ass because I played myself. Not only do I have 50,000 more characters in this cast now with the troop's teams, but how did they even catch all those Pokemon between Rustboro and Dufert? And how did these literal elementary schoolers take care of them? You know what? That's semantics for later Deja to figure out. Let's talk about the benefits of having such a large cast now. Like the fact that there's only so many archetypes and I've got 30 timid characters minimum, so I've got to learn how to start developing characters' voices to tell them apart and further define them. Turns out, I can even use small details to reflect their characters, like the makeup of their team for instance. Here's an example. Troop leader Gidget's got a well-founded team of Mon to help on travels. Meanwhile, unsure Asadi's sitting over here with a team of eclectic Mon she almost exclusively acquired outside of her control. And I'm being serious. Sammy was given to her, Kiba was an accidental capture, and Hoenn caught himself. Chapter 9 has way less drafts than Chapter 8, but trying to write this ending kicked my ass, so let's talk about it. Okay, so the first draft had Asadi and Kiba in their motel room talking about the gym battle while Hoenn and Sammy practiced trainer time in the corner. Cool. Lovely little ending to a chapter, right? Yeah, would have been if I could have figured out anything. I'm talking major writer's block. I don't know what dialogue's happening or how to transition properly. It's like eating food that fucks with your stomach, but you can't figure out what was bad. Turns out, there is no peace with Team Asadi. Only problems. Next few drafts had the team still at their motel, but Asadi went downstairs to call her mom, while Kiba and Hoenn got into it upstairs about Asadi's training incompetence. And Sammy straight up water guns both of them and sends them to timeout. He just straight up tells Kiba to go be with the kids and Hoenn to take his happy ass back to Granite Cave if they got problems. The absolute balls on this mudfish. This is not my Sammy. But looking at the way things actually end, maybe it should be. Because if you read Leftovers, you know how the end of chapter 9 plays out. It's an absolute travesty, and getting bullied by your own comic into changing the trajectory is nasty work. But guess what? After this shit goes up, 2-month hiatus. Not gonna stress me out and just think the comic's gonna continue on like shit is sweet. The Interim, Part 1. So let's give the ending of last chapter a little breather while we catch up on post-grad life, which has involved me getting my first apartment with my roommates in 2017, getting a new apartment with a new roommate in 2018, and now trying to get my own solo apartment in summer 2019. It's my first time living alone and I'm kinda about it. So I'm a hedgehog mom now. Around March 2019 is where I met my son Kirishima. And boy, does he have a lot to teach me about taking care of an exotic pet. It's almost like I took this energy and poured it into restarting my Pokemon Variations series with a specific focus on care and ecological impact of these exotic creatures. Give it up for me ever so slightly breaking my long vow of lurkerhood to participate in my first Nuzlocke community collab. Hang in there, y'all. And I think that's it. Okay, that's not it. Because what do you mean my Pokemon are humans now? All I wanted at the end of chapter 9 was for Team Asadi to get along. But turns out, all I got was confirmation that their arc is literally just them learning how to exist in the same space as each other. So that's where this domestic AU comes in. Or well, this domestic AU wasn't supposed to be a full AU. I was originally just redesigning Sammy and Kiba's Gijinka from this image, and then got the idea to make a parody PS Vita dating sim cover. And then one thing led to another, and turns out, having Team Asadi all be humans and, you know, actually get along and shit has actually helped me figure out their dynamic a lot. Really leaning into the whole their peers thing, with them literally being roommates in this AU. Side note, why race code Sammy, Kiba, or Hoenn when I could just have them be their dominant colors instead? That's way more fun. You know, reflecting on chapter 9's ending kinda got me realizing that shit had me stressed, not because of the process, but because of how the ending played out. And if I, person writing this story over God knows how many drafts, could still be affected by my plot in the end, maybe, perhaps, I kinda cooked? And maybe there really is validity in this one special feeling I've been having for a while. The feeling that storytelling is my life's purpose. Chapter 10. Chapter 10 is the favorite child. Look at it. Got me a little melancholic ocean spray with a hint of refreshment art style going on, with the thin lines and perfect contrast between characters and background, and a little texture sprinkled here and there, and I could honestly eat this shit up. Also, look at these aesthetic ass thumbnails and this long ass Clip Studio Paint thumbnail template I made. And don't even get me started. You know what? I'm started. Your boy has upgraded to Clip Studio Paint EX and unlocked the savior of my sanity, the keeper of consistent art styles across chapters, my process streamlining, storage saving baby boo, the zine feature. We saw up, in fact, and I'm heading into Leftovers Phase 2. We switching to one chapter a month. And no, this will not be the only chapter to be uploaded in this format. I want you to know that the original draft of this chapter had a cool little adventure feel to it, with Asadi and Co exploring Sea Mauville and splitting into humans and Pokemon, each with their own plots. But no, I've got to stand 10 toes down on the ending of chapter 9 and be all introspective. I need you to look at this lineup of my children. Straight dripped to death. Shout out to Steven Stone in the Into the Night extra for soft launching the concept of traveling characters needing more than just a single outfit. He crawled so the rest of my cast could run in style. And shout out to this lineup being one of a ridiculously unnecessary amount of concept art done for this chapter. This place is just a shadow in the final chapter? Sure, I'll lay out every floor and give it a full color design, why not? Anxious perfectionism? What the hell are you talking about? Boy, if you don't take this post-chapter sketch dump and leave me alone. The Interim Part 2. Yeah, I was gassed about Phase 2 and all that, but I was not finna make a chapter a month. Not with this hellish ass summer of trying to find an apartment I can actually afford on my own, so hiatus? With some small projects here and there. Got me a new little lineup with better shape design. Why not try some voice cleans for Team Asadi? And oh, you know what would be super useful? A bunch of aesthetic reference boards for each Hoenn location versus their real world place, with some fashion thrown in there too, so I know how to draw the background characters when I get to that town. Actually, let me just make some stock background characters since I got the time. I'll totally make it past Little Root with these. Oh yeah, so I should probably make chapter covers for everything up to chapter 9 too. And maybe I should combine the single pages into long pages so it's more cohesive with the most recent chapters. Speaking of cohesion, should I? Nah. Okay, look, while I'm combining pages, I might as well see if I can add some elements to make sure the storytelling flows a bit better. Emphasis on add, by the way, gotta respect rule number 1. So I can't remake or take things out, excluding the prologue. What if I make it a challenge so I have to make all this new shit near indistinguishable from the old shit stylistically, while also having to write around what I wrote 4 years ago? And that'll keep me busy. Ain't ashamed of my old art by any means, so let me hyper-focus and study on all the flaws and strengths and figure out what mediums I worked on so I can replicate it as closely as possible. I mean, down to giving sweet old Mr. Rachel another shady ass face because I can. And it wouldn't be me if I wasn't naming phases though, so I'll call this, how about director's cuts? Chapter 11. Oh, so we've officially hit the Steven Universe is bad actually video essay era. No character development happens if Steven isn't on screen. It's an interesting take, so I'm just gonna grab that real quick and use it as motivation to try a chapter where Team Asadi isn't the main focus. In fact, let's try to fold in the other storylines that we've been bouncing around in my head for a while. Those being Into the Night and After All These Years. It's time to see what Lucidia and Steven are up to outside of being the champion and Asadi's mom. And it's time to see that in the main comic itself instead of just side comics. But here's a side tangent, a little bit. Does anyone remember the Get Down on Netflix back in summer 2016? Because not gonna lie, the mark that show left on me in regards to historical movements and the small lives and interpersonal relationships that make up history is just now starting to kick in. That shit is hitting hard this chapter with Roxanne's meeting and me trying to tie in Hoenn's politics in general. We've got some major city pop vibes here. A fitting style for Lucidia and Nellie's poppy personalities and flair. Somehow I've got an amicable relationship with buildings and environmental world building now. Like I actually want to draw little details like corner stores or specific types of architecture differentiate between parts of the city. Who is she feeling like? Of course, there's also the maddening detail I put into designing Lydia's wingsuit for its short appearance on screen, but holy shit, look at the actual city. Narrative multitasking unlocked. Why would I, with a million different characters, write individual scenes to tell us only 1 or 2 pieces of info at a time when I can maximize returns on these bitches? We've got Lucidia and Mr. Stone's tea scene, for instance. What do we learn about these two here? Well, neither of them really fuck with political uproars like that, which is why they're either not at the meeting at all or left. Lucidia respects Joseph as an elder, and Joseph reciprocates this respect, but on more equal terms. Lucidia is at the very least familiar with Joseph's plight regarding communicating with Steven, or she knows Steven herself. These two share enough history that Joseph not only asks about Asadi's well-being, but also knows how to calm Lucidia down, which is finna crash. And finally, their relationship is close enough to ask for favors, which then leads into Asadi getting her Pokénap later on. All this shit over a cup of tea is some structured dialogue, and now I fear I am unstoppable. And also, I had no clue where to put this in, but you see Slateport? You see how cold this bitch is? Slateport only looks like this at night because Slateport's theme in the game scared the shit out of me as a kid. Am I the only person who experienced that? Like, why is this song so fucking happy? What are you hiding? Anyway, yeah, narrative multitasking was a major shift in my writing, but it ain't got shit on the next section. This is my canon event. So imagine this, right? You're me, and your summer 2019 is hell. Your Nana passes. A week later, after utter apathy from the internet, a streamer you're into succumbs to mental illness, rest in peace Etika. You're dealing with stress, trying to make rent on your own, and you're crumbling under imposter syndrome because you aren't adulting correctly. So you make a crucial decision. You decide to seek therapy. Because if you're an imposter in adulthood, the least you can do is get an actual diagnosis so you're not an imposter in mental illness too. Anyway, so I get diagnosed with GAD and childhood PTSD and like, whoa now, PTSD? Ain't that for people who've been through, you know, actually traumatic shit like war and abuse and all that? I mean, the reason Asadi has PTSD is because she was attacked by a Poochiana when she was younger. I haven't had anything happen like that. Unless, when I was 4, my pop-pop took me to a Memorial Day fair where I rode a Schmedium horse. I don't know if it was actually a horse or a pony, I can't remember that far, so we're going Schmedium. Unfortunately, the attendant didn't strap the saddle on correctly, so I went around the track sitting upright and came back around the track hanging off the side of that bitch. Thankfully, I went unharmed. Or so I thought. Because Pop-Pop had recorded this event on his camcorder and showed it to my family, who of course had their laughs and we moved on. It's like, no he didn't. It became an annual event to watch and laugh at that video. And what do you mean decades later I'm realizing that this was responsible for my fear of making mistakes or being caught lacking? And turns out mental events are also PTSD. So therapy ends up being one mind-blowing revelation after another. Did you know we're capable of inheriting trauma? Like, generational trauma exists and the adults around us are just as much products of their environment as we are. And like, nobody gets a rule book on how to be an adult, which honestly has really helped with my imposter syndrome during today's particularly emotional section. So if you don't mind, sir, I would like to take a bit of a break. Remember that group image I showed you from my comic? I would like to show that off now. So I do that, and after briefly going through chapter 9's stressful events and how it led me to a hiatus, I start running through Team Asadi's dynamic, putting each one of them out like it's a show and tell of some shit. So the team is basically split into two sides, right? Asadi and Sammy are conflict avoidant, usually try to de-escalate situations, while these two, Kiba and Hoenn, are quicker to argue while also being really bad at communicating with each other. So fires get started and it's up to Asadi and Sammy to point them out. And you wanna know what my therapist does? This man looks me dead in my fucking eyes and says, "Oh, so they're your family then?" Yeah, but Congrats. Your Deja has evolved from writing what she knows to knowing what she writes. My life has literally never been the same since. And neither has Leftovers. Chapter 12 wasn't supposed to exist, but I have unlocked prestige and self-reflection, so here we are. Not only that, by the end of 2019, I've been planning my October 2020 trip to Japan, which will fulfill a lifelong dream and be my first time abroad, but it wouldn't be me if I wasn't doing the most. So I'm also writing up loose summaries for Leftovers as a just-in-case post for someone to publish for me, just in case, you know, I perish on the flight over. Some real existential shit, but not without some cool things coming out of it though. Because why didn't I tell me Phoebe and Hayes' dynamic could be so cute? Also, I completely forgot about Lonan. My bad. Chapter 11 was a lot. Like, a lot. Particularly with all the POV switching. So we're just gonna scale all that back this chapter and focus on unlikely or unseen encounters instead. Like Gidget and her co-workers, Sammy and Pema, my ghost children. And let's experiment with the Sword and Shield Ken Sugimori style I've been toying around with in other art. Because it'd be kind of gas to have an art style that could replicate a mix of 2D and 3D models with more form consciousness when it comes to shading. Oh yeah, and shading wise, this is the first time for the hard and soft shading mix, and I fuck with it heavy. Just like my slight experiments in abstraction in Sammy's Nightmare. And just like the rest of this mercifully short chapter. Not a whole lot of chapter in this chapter, but nonetheless a whole lot of character. And look at that cover. Chef's kiss. It's everyone's favorite year. So, safe to say the Japan trip isn't happening. 2020 is a year, and in order to understand the Leftovers work at the end of this year, I need to give a framework for the build-up of this year. First, I made it a New Year's resolution to start my first Twitter account. Already fumbled the bag out the gate, but we ball. I'm out here making overly detailed, but admittedly kind of smart, time of day guides. Give it up for the best Leftovers logline and the greatest group image I've ever drawn. The group image that would later on be used against me in therapy. March, I started accepting cameos. April is a lockdown, but only for 2 weeks. So here are some pics I made for emails between me and my coworkers in that time. We head back to work in early May-ish, and I would just like to remind that I work at a job that makes toys for redemption centers, like Chuck E. Cheese, Dave & Buster's. Hallways at work are getting kind of empty. I'm let go from my job in July. Wait, what the fuck? Living alone, unemployed, no insurance, and therefore no therapy. Time to sink or swim, bitch. Safe to say, I'm about to do a whole lot of sinking before swimming because my anxiety around basically everything, but especially moving forward with Leftovers due to impending instability, gets to the point that I'm like, fuck it. I'll research and do my own exposure therapy. And, do not recommend raw dogging your mental health if you can help it. But despite finances getting tricky, me living off of unemployment and constant guilt with my shit already preemptively packed and my never-ending cage match with anxiety, I cannot lie to you. As far as top periods of my life goes, this one's gotta be up there because that 365 days I spent unemployed was 365 days of me living and breathing this comic shit. The detox era, aka chapters 13 through 16. It's late October-ish 2020. We're already taking a detox from Twitter, and you know what? Throw the rest of social media in there too. My mental health is already bad enough. I don't need to feel guilty about not being worse off than other people on my timeline on top of that. But I'll keep a little YouTube just so I'm not completely destitute when my motivation towards Leftovers crumples around me. Because wow, I got nothing to do with an extra dash of no social media? I should be trying to get as many pages in as possible, right? Yeah, but I don't know how much time I'm gonna have off. I'm gonna have to get a job and pay rent eventually. I'm afraid if I start something and then get employed at a shit job in the middle, I'm gonna have an even harder time getting back on schedule while I'm trying to get used to this new job. Why are you thinking about all that? Didn't therapy teach you to live in the moment? Are you dead ass? I only had like 9 months of therapy max. That can't undo decades of indecisiveness. Yeah, but it can help you figure out how to cope with it. Like, come on, I thought you were prestige and self-reflection now. Yeah, you're right. So I do what any motivated individual would do, and I watch YouTube videos instead of working. That's when something wonderful graces my screen. Kaez. Kaez, a comic artist, is out here making vlogs of themselves struggling with their comic just as much as I am, and suddenly I feel very seen. If they're working their hardest, then shit, I'm finna work hard too. I would just like to say, anxious perfectionism is a bitch, and it's taking precedent over my lust for improvement, my love of the game. So guess what we're about to do? We're about to experiment our way out of this mindset. First up, we've got chapter 13 coming in hot with my newly annotated scripts, dreamy morning vibe, and time-saving coloring technique. If you ain't an important person or aspect, you're gonna get this single color and gradient treatment. Outside of just coloring, why don't we shake things up a bit? Sleeport's theme is controlled chaos. Panel's been controlled, so let's up the chaotic. Chapter 14 is trying to kick my ass with this whole, oh, but I'm tired of my digital workspace. I don't want to sit at my desk. So bam, get that easel and get some paper and get the fuck to work. And no, it's not as easy as it sounds to just whip the pencil into shape, but it is easy and fulfilling to experiment with traditional pencil weights. And whoops, turns out I made the line art at the top of the first page too thick. That's alright. Find a thinner pencil and keep it pushing. Also, respect your time and just add the frames in digitally. Less room for error, which means less room for loss of motivation. I've never been a stranger to process anxiety, but I will master the art of working smarter, not harder, if it'll offset the fear of starting new projects. Now here comes chapter 15, and here's a meme I made while exporting my pages, just in case you want to know what I'm feeling like. We pushed through the mental storm that plagued chapter 14, so now we're operating at peak work smarter, not harder efficiency. I discovered my besties, Pure Refs, to make reference boards, and the goddamn subview tool in CSP, where I can reference said reference boards. The Deja Doodle sketch brush is born, which is actually just a pencil brush with extra adjustments to match my freak, because I love the traditional line art look. Process? Not so much. Next up, we've got the crowd brush, a literal brush I've made for background characters, specifically in a style matching my art. And this truly big-brained idea has now allowed me to pour all my concept art skill points into designing Port Pearl. Except instead of being a perfectionist, I'm kind of chill now. But I will never be chill about how fucking cool this place is. Do you see this? And for the chapter 15 finisher, we've got Google Doc author's notes, a document I update every time I finish a chapter so I can just copy paste the description for each page across all platforms instead of spending a good hour posting like I used to. Truly a stunning performance this chapter. What's next? Ooh, give it up for chapter 16, aka my dusty pastel era. What are we working with improvement wise? Well, this is the first chapter to have an actual style test and guide with brush sizes, shading colors, etc. for the sake of repeatability. Took me 16 chapters to get here, but we love that. Backgrounds are saturated and bright for that sunny summer beach day, while the characters are ever so slightly desaturated, hence the dusty pastel nomiker. And last up for this chapter, we've got a liberal usage of spacing between panels. Because readers spend literal seconds looking at a comic panel, while I've spent damn near a year and a half thinking about this fight, so I'm spacing these panels out as much as I need to so they get their deserved attention. And also, fight pacing and all that rah-rah. While battling my anxious perfectionist demons artistically, I've been simultaneously flourishing narratively. I mean, my narrative improvements are going bananas during the Slateport arc. I mean, sure, I'm not getting to go to Japan, but my research for solo travel hasn't gone in vain, because in said research, I not only peeped how much really goes into planning an itinerary, but I also learned about hostels for the first time, which was already crazy enough, but then I learned that it's not just tourists that use them. They're also sometimes used by salarymen because they might be closer to work than home. Thus, the Temp Stations Inn is born. A hostel whose name actually has nothing to do with the word temptations. It's actually a hybrid of temp from temp worker and stay or stations, as in a temporary station for temp workers to stay. But the owner is oblivious to the other meaning, and it's become a joke amongst people who work and stay there. And I guess this is a perfect moment to mention how batshit intense my world building process has become. Slateport is a tourist hotspot and a hub for exploring different modes of transport, cross-generational connections, like Gidget and her co-workers helping Asadi, or even Asadi learning a bit of conflict resolution from the kids, and relations between Pokemon and humans that extend outside of battling, like the Painter Smeargle duo, Chrissy's Canine fan club, or even joint work opportunities. You want it? Slateport's got it. I'm trying to capitalize on every bit I can. Let me tell you what Slateport's also got. Some of the most highly anticipated scenes in the story so far, and they're all pretty much in chapter 16. To start, I gotta talk about Kiba versus Hoenn, which was originally a much simpler hype dogfight conceived over a chopped and screwed version of Kendrick Lamar's backseat freestyle. Not even the lyrics, just straight aggression and bass. Don't get me wrong, one of my biggest goals in the final version of the fight was still to show Kiba and Hoenn fighting like animals while highlighting the difference between an official battle and the tomfoolery of these two. But instead of Kiba winning, Hoenn accepting her as a worthy foe, and then everyone clapping like a Tumblr tall tale, I ended up having a little spat with a friend of mine, realized conflicts aren't always so black and white, especially if you don't know what you want as a resolution. And then this led to the realization that Kiba, someone who angers easily at the disrespect and belittling of herself and others, and Hoenn, someone who is prone to downplaying serious situations with jokes, literally trigger each other without knowing and without being able to communicate this. Thus, there is no winner, no peace, Just more work for me in future chapters. And admittedly, learning one of my most beneficial lessons as an author, that of how to put my own instant gratification aside for the sake of respecting my character's plights and my own narrative integrity. Then you've got Danny's parental problems. Now, Danny's original characterization was absolutely the aggressive brat archetype. Then towards the end of chapter 1, I was like, yeah, but what if he's just a perceived problem child though, because he has a shit home life? Of course, we all know my self-awareness and emotional maturity back then was unmatched. That's why it's taken me until 4 years later in post-therapy to actually figure out how to write the nuances of a child stuck in a situation like this. Not only that, but his funky ass parents too, who are ultimately just kids themselves since they had Danny at 15 and are only 25. I don't have time to go into my love of generational trauma and cycles as story potential, but I'm loving getting to dive into the fact that Danny is actually a victim of neglect and how that comes across as aggression since he's, you know, an elementary schooler with little to no concept of emotional management. And lastly in this chapter, we've got Asadi and Hoenn's talk. Oh, Asadi. Oh, Hoenn. First, I'd like to give it up to me for actually thinking about the team dynamic back around chapter 13 when I realized I wanted to get Asadi and Hoenn alone for the scene. Because everyone and their mother is out in chapter 13 for breakfast. So it would feel contrived for Hoenn to just so happen to not be out as well. Except Asadi's not trying to get her feelings hurt again, Sammy's on conflict watch after chapter 9, and Kiba could just literally care less if he eats or not. So outside of that, nobody cares that Hoenn doesn't get breakfast. Except for this one commenter, and shout out to you for picking up what I was putting down, even if you didn't know it yet. On to the scene itself. It's important for these two to be alone outside of the rest of the team's influence because it forces them to actually communicate. And since a certain AU, I've discovered that Hoenn is so fun to write when he's out of his depth. First with Hina baby broing him, now with Asadi who he's forced to be tactful with. He can't just strong arm her into resolving conflict like he did with Sammy and his trainer tongue problem. And then Asadi just unintentionally takes advantage of Hoenn being out of his depth. And oh look, Sammy's the only one who hasn't gotten his awkward 5-panel progression with Asadi yet. Yes, this is a purposeful staple in the team interactions now. Now I'm gonna slightly gush about what else is purposely done in the scene, because the last panels at the end of Asadi and Hoenn's conversation here parallel the first panels of their falling out in chapter 9, this time showing things being mended. And yeah, I'm giving myself flowers on Maine, let's keep it moving. 4 years an island girl, 1 year unemployed. Within just under a year of not having a job, I finished 4 chapters of Leftovers, giving me my first solid buffer since chapters 1 through 6, helped paint an actual mural, and I cooperated with InDesign long enough to write a book. Let's talk about it real quick. 4 years in Island Girl is my gift for Leftovers' 6th anniversary, and it's a continuation of some PDF sketchbooks detailing the behind-the-scenes processes and such from a Patreon long past. Basically a book form of this video for a specific set of chapters, and printed by the GOATs at Mix'em. Check out my video review if you're trying to get something printed. Now, I technically consider 6 through 12 the due for art, since the gang hadn't been shown explicitly in Slaveport until chapter 13. Which means we spent 4 literal real-life human years stuck trying to get off one island. Shit, maybe I should have let Asadi forget the gym badge. Maybe she was trying to tell me something. Occasionally, I get comments asking if I'd ever make physical copies of Leftovers itself, and while that would be a dream, it would also be a lot of tedium because there's about 50-11 formats across a short span of chapters. But, you know, 4 years an Island Girl is kind of like a proxy of that dream, and it never fails to make me smile whenever I see it on my bookshelf. Also, big ups to anyone who got a physical copy or PDF download. Thus ends my unemployment adventures, as I end up landing 2 jobs by July 2021. My full-time, plus skill points in illustrative typography, and my part-time, plus skill points in InDesign. And shit, while we're at it, we might as well cover the rest of this year too. Consider my lurkerhood officially broken, as I've now been invited to the Nuzlocke Discord server. But it's aight, because for the first time, I no longer feel like an island doing this Pokemon comic shit. And I get to meet some pretty cool peeps with their own Nuzlocke comics. And is it just me, or is my reading list getting real long? Picard Peruses is the name of a stream I started towards the end of 2021 to live read all the mini Nuzlocke comics I've been meaning to read for years now. That and my first Discord server I put together for updates. Shout out to my rats specifically, y'all know who you are. Both end up being an absolutely wild ride, and a great way to keep everyone updated as I head into the hiatus. Yeah, so it turns out this large cast multi-storyline shit ain't for the faint of heart. I've managed my way through the Slateport arc in excellent fashion, but my ass is once again on a road with no destination. And I know Maulville is the next town, but after scripting chapters 17, 18, and 19 at the end of 2021, realizing they were going absolutely nowhere substantial, I'm finna start calling something. But what? Where? Because I love my characters and even the other storylines. I just feel like I'm at a crucial crossroads here where, despite how much of a pantser I've naturally been, I may need to start reining things in a bit. I may need to start actually planning farther ahead, which is already anxiety inducing itself because I'm somehow 16 chapters deep into the story and still afraid of committing ideas to paper. Probably should have addressed that shit in therapy. But also, in order to plan properly, I'm gonna have to take a pretty long hiatus. Of course, I start asking myself things like, what if people aren't interested anymore when I come back? And then Out of nowhere, Saga, a series I've been reading since high school, miraculously returns in January 2022 from a 4-year-long hiatus. And you bet your ass I'm right there at the comic shop waiting for its great return, because I love this story and the characters, and I think I have my answer actually. So I decided to officially announce a year-long hiatus for Leftovers in 2022. Now that that's decided, what the fuck am I actually going to do during this hiatus? Here's something funny. On an absolute whim on New Year's Eve of 2022, I decided to check out the first episode of this new little Netflix show called Arcane, which then turned into a binge. And I talked about Arcane enough on this channel this year, which is something I never thought I'd have to say, but the way this shit read me for everything I had and then extended a helping hand has got to be biblical adjacent, because not only does Arcane have a huge cast with different storylines that are excellently interwoven and tackle deep themes and world building without sacrificing each character's interpersonal dynamics for the sake of expositing things at the audience or aiming for grander stakes outside of its reach, but it does all of that as a fucking League of Legends show without needing to know League of Legends lore. And yeah, I know I said I was secure with taking Leftovers seriously back in like chapter 7 or 8 or something, but I'd be lying if I said there isn't still a part of me at this point that's always cautious about the barrier to entry issue when it comes to my story being cloaked behind the simple expectations of a Pokemon fan comic. And I'd be lying if I said analyzing Arcane, aka a piece of media I deeply admire, hasn't unknowingly kickstarted my hiatus process by reflecting the quality of storytelling I want to achieve right back at me. Now, I'm off the plan for planning my hiatus to plan this story, most of which I speak on in my Leftovers vlog series of vlogs that are inspired by Kai's. So the process I've ended up with follows these steps. Look at prior chapters and check my story then versus my story now versus the story I'm aiming for. Next, pull up a hierarchy of needs where I've broken down my goals into tiers. So like, if I want a political subplot, I can't have that if I don't have the government fleshed out. And maybe, depending on the subplot, I can't have a government properly fleshed out if I don't know how the region functions and how it was even formed. After all that rah-rah, it's time to study how other writers plan their stories, then figure out a method that works for me, which ends up being worksheets. Lots and lots of worksheets. I make a plan for what goes on in the worksheets, and then I make the worksheets. Then spend the rest of 2022 filling out the worksheets until I've fleshed out a lot of Hoenn's details, managed to figure out a few, but not all, annoyingly difficult storylines, connected most of the cast by themes after somehow ending up with the cast twice as large, and yes, that is a cry for help. And, most importantly, I now have an entire skeleton foundation for the story of Leftovers across all its seasons. Actually, scratch that and make it the second most important outcome of this hiatus, because look at these world building binders. I will never be normal about these. Chapter 17. Oh yeah, we back in here with maximum post-hiatus efficiency. Would you believe me if I said the current chapter 17 is actually a combo of the OG chapter 17, 18, and 19 I started writing back at the end of 2021? So OG 17 had Asadi meeting Lucidia and taking care of her license shit, with the added difference of Asadi getting her hair done at Lucidia's job to make her feel better and less stressed afterwards, and her mom talking to Sammy about the license fiasco and asking him to take care of her, thus mimicking chapter 1. OG 18 had Asadi sleeping off a migraine, which I haven't mentioned this, but Asadi's consistent migraines are an ode to my own consistent migraines, and this is totally not foreshadowing. And while she's incapacitated, Sammy confronts Hoenn and Kiba about resolving their beef. And then OG chapter 19 has a bunch of superfluous scenes, and then at the end, Asadi tells her team about the license situation. Every last one of these original chapters were fluffed to adhere to the length of time the troop spends in Slateport, which I charted out on this calendar I made back around chapter 11. Even the original thumbnails for chapter 17 are padded, with me giving myself a blank check for the chapter length and page height, as if I didn't learn from chapter 7. But thankfully, Arcane and my 2022 hiatus freed me from the semantics of time hell. And now that we've talked about what we have, let's talk about what we got. First off, we putting limits on page height. Go ahead and cap that shit at a 9x12 canvas. And yeah, copy pasting some shit from the OG thumbnails ended up with some pages being cluttered. What matters is the imposed limit. Matter of fact, go ahead and cap the amount of zine pages to 45 max. I got a CSP on my iPad back during detox so I could thumbnail anywhere but my desktop workspace, so I'm taking advantage. Go ahead and put me in the Mile High Comic Club. I'm feeling kind of nostalgic, so I want to try out the VHS CRT effect. I'm gonna add a little noise texture too because I'm feeling extra freaky, but I'm not feeling like spending a bunch of time on concept art, thankfully. So I learned to just sketch it. It's a concept, doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay. I'm even out here using perspective tricks on buildings now. But the VIP of chapter 17 improvements. Can we give it up for actual typography in this bitch? I finally figured out how to work between CSP and Illustrator by exporting my zine sketches as a PDF and clip, opening the PDF in Illustrator, lettering and doing speech bubbles on another layer, then turning off the thumbnails enough and exporting each artboard as their own PNGs with transparent backgrounds, so I can just place them over the pages and clip. Sounds convoluted as shit because it is, but the process ends up becoming a vibe after a while. Oh, and while we're at it, let's also give it up for the new reusable speech bubbleheads. Oh, and also the cover mirroring chapter 11 because I'm just like that now. Stripping the cast back to just Asadi, Lucidia, Nellie, and Sammy is also a vibe, because I'm not only able to play with comparing dynamics between the pairs, with Lucidia and Nellie acting like siblings and lifelong friends, while Asadi and Sammy act like two people striking up conversation in line at the DMV. Getting to bring in my love of cross-generational connections here is also fun, with Nellie and Sammy being able to reflect together, and then special focus paid to Lucidia's efforts and insecurities as a mother, which is a common topic that comes up between me and my mom. But just because Lucidia is shaky about motherhood doesn't mean she's sweet. Don't get it twisted. Man, the Slateport arc is just full of scenes I've been waiting to get to, huh? Anyway, Asadi's licensed team talk time. And first of all, look at these dorks. Back to back for what? OG Chapter 9 was a chapter where Asadi confessed her lack of trainerhood and license fiasco to her team, which would then prompt more team drama. But the original scene at the hostel was more so Asadi talking at her Pokemon. She was essentially just putting the info out there, tucking her tail between her legs, and letting them do what they wanted to with the information, while simultaneously being incapacitated by a migraine. I mean, it couldn't be helped. I had no clue where the story was supposed to go post Slateport arc, so the beat was supposed to be a setup for more tension for a potential later readdressing and resolution. But then we get to post hiatus Chapter 17, and I made one pivotal change to this scene. Asadi has to have an actual conversation with her team, because Kiba and Hoenn naturally don't know what the hell a trainer license even is. Thus, the focus is put on the external issue of who's gonna tell them, while the realization of Asadi's lack of license is treated more internally by this group of non-communicators, who actually get a chance to communicate in a civil manner for once. And yes, I set this scene in a hotel room to parallel Chapter 9. Also worth noting in this scene is Sammy's wrangling capabilities when it comes to Kiba and Hoenn. How he puts his foot down in regards to their bickering is something I've mentioned cutting from drafts before, specifically back in Chapter 9 and then again in Beta Chapter 18. And it's a clear result of how the scope of Leftovers, but Sammy's character in particular, has changed due to the hiatus. Sammy putting his foot down in the OG Chapter 9 felt too quick back when I was writing the actual Chapter 9, because that was meant to be a big turning point in his role on Team Asadi. It was a turn I actually hinted towards in his evolution scene, where he decides to let Golbat have it. But when the foreshadowing was supposed to come to fruition in the OG Chapter 9 scene, it felt more natural for him to be the middleman instead of a straightforward peacekeeper all of a sudden. At that point, I'd already started planning Leftovers for the long haul, and if Sammy putting his foot down was going to be a big turning point for his character, then I'd have to lead up to it properly. But then we get to Chapter 17, and I've gone through tossing out ideas about Sammy's backstory in Chapters 10 and 12, but it's only after the hiatus where I know for sure where his character is going and how extensive of an arc he's going to have. So Sammy putting his foot down is no longer a turning point. In fact, it's actually become more beneficial for me to establish this side of him at this point, so I can start focusing on where he's supposed to go, and how the dynamics of he and his teammates develop now that I know where I'm going. A small idea such as Sammy not being as much of a pushover as he seems, which was actually hinted at back in Chapter 3 with his small indignation at Asadi fumbling her capture, has managed to survive over all these years and blossom into the stepping stone for the character's more fleshed out plot going forward. You know, writing this chapter, I was met with a lot of interesting realizations. First of all, there's something hilarious about working on a comic over several years, only to realize that you and your main character have mostly grown apart due to the fact that she's still 19 while you're 27 at this point. And so she's still in her emotionally immature era, not allowing herself to cry and such, which is something I've since grown out of with the help of therapy. And then second, Asadi's decision to take a leap, become a trainer, and the setbacks she faces were very similar to mine, specifically in reference to starting Leftovers in the first place, and then trying to muster up enough motivation to work towards a buffer back in the detox of 2020. Which is why, at the end of Chapter 17, Asadi says, "I'm tired of false starts," because despite how far apart we grow over the years, that sentiment is still the key aspect we share. Despite all of my writing progress, 2022 still ends in a bit of an exhale. I've ended my Picard Peruses streams and shut down my Discord due to heavy social exhaustion, and I'm a little concerned about my health because my left eye is getting kinda wonky. But nevertheless, with my foundation laid, I'm more excited than ever to march onwards to new Leftovers horizons. Chapter 18. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and be honest. I had no fucking idea what was going on with Steven's meeting around the Doofer arc, but no worries, cause I do now. Post-hiatus clarity is gas, and turns out I'm finna hit the gas on something I really should have slowed down on. Thus the perils of overambitiousness and excitement. Chapter 18 is the truest possible testament to my growth as a writer in a lot of areas, as it's the first one to be wholly concepted and written after my 2022 adventures in Plan Land. Visually, it's a bit of a mixed bag, having Chapter 16's larger panels and smaller gutter while having Chapter 17's everything else, including the CRT effect, which Sorry for the eye strain with that. I think I got a little overzealous there. And also, save for the small cats. Fuck, I hated the small cats. I've gotten rid of the texture overlay because it just felt like too much. And those reusable speech bubble heads from last chapter, yeah, let me go ahead and simplify those because I'm not finna draw expressions for everyone. All you need to know is that it's them talking. The rest can be determined by dialogue so long as my writing game's on point. Now, we're taking Let's See the Daily Lives of all these one-note Roblox characters I've never given a shit about until now to its farthest possible point this chapter, with the introduction of the entire Elite Four, their overseer, and the intricacies of their dynamics as I fight for my life trying to filter the heavy amounts of exposition through their reactions and interactions as hard as possible so I don't overload the audience. Unfortunately, I maybe sorta overdid it on the sudden overflow of new characters and dynamics. And by sorta overdid it, I mean I got a comment saying, this feels like being in a crowded room with too many combos to keep track of, and while the idea of alienating the audience is actually kinda cool, it's only cool if I intend to do it, and this isn't the case. So as excited as I am about this new world building and all these new political tensions between the League and the government, which I actually lightly threw out there in chapter 9 despite not knowing how far I take it at the time, I took note and am committed to slowing the fuck down at least a little to trickle things in a bit more. Because having a bunch of characters on screen that are established to each other, the writers and everyone else working on the project, but have not even been attempted to be given a proper introduction to the audience is one of my biggest media consumption pet peeves, so I'm trying to nip that in the bud moving forward. Okay, before I unfortunately move on to larger life shit, I get to talk about another anticipated scene, and that's Steven and Lonan's meetup. Oh, how far these boys have come. So originally Steven was just gonna link up with Lonan off screen, then the next time they appeared in a Saudi storyline, they'd just be like, oh yeah, we're here now. But after Adventures in Planland, I had to give them a scene of their own where we can explore the dynamic with a healthy dollop of awkward tension, because it wouldn't be me if I didn't have my awkward tension. Team Asadi's not here, so I gotta get it in somehow. Oh, we've unfortunately made it to the end of chapter 18 because I can't say much else about these two for risk of spoilers, and that means we've also made it to the end of all the uploaded chapters. And welp, let's go ahead and get the next year over with. 23andMe. The only difference between 2023 and 2015 is therapy. So it's the end of 2022 and I'm tired and my left eye is acting real weird. But that's okay because I got the earliest appointment coming up in March 2023. Yeah, but you know what's not cool though? 6 days before said appointment, my hedgehog Hiroshima passes away and I'm depressed, but hopeful for at least a solution to my eye issue. Asadi has migraines because I'm naturally migraine prone. Joke's on me. Turns out I've had a brain tumor for a long ass time and it's just big enough that I'm starting to go blind. My first ever surgery is brain surgery just a couple days later, which is absolutely diabolical, but it wouldn't be me if I wasn't doing the most. Then I get sent home with my mom where I have 2 unpaid months off work for healing and physical therapy purposes. It's May 2023 though, and I'm finally now allowed to go back up to my apartment. I'm living life like it's golden. Even got a better quality apartment I'm finna move into. My current lease is up in August. You know my ass is straight back to work, managing to get both the cover and page 1 of chapter 18 out by the first week of June. But apparently, I failed to check the box that opted out of more suffering for the year because second week of June kicks off my first ever time having a seizure. And I say kick off because I couldn't just have one. No, in my efforts to stop having a panic attack long enough to actually figure out how to cease these post-op episodes, all I met with is increased medication and a medically approved and recommended FAFO method. Fuck around and find out. So in addition to every subsequent page of chapter 18 after page 1 coming with a free boxing match against random stimuli and the transition between bedridden depression and trying to accurately post with sunglasses on and the computer brightness turned all the way down every Tuesday, I also get the pleasure of having seizures bi-weekly for the rest of the year, except for October where they're weekly, and December where they're thankfully calmed down to once a month. Oh, and silly me, I forgot to mention that I can't drive on my own until I hit 6 consecutive months without a seizure. And in case you're wondering how that's going, I've been trying to hit 6 months for 2 years now. And let me just say goodbye to that new apartment because it's time to move back home with mom until this seizure shit gets sorted out. Is this A, being bullied by a year, B, the beginning of my villain arc, or C, personal character development to be milked for story potential at a later date? And the craziest shit is that this whole year is actually life imitating art and I can't even scream about why yet. So yeah, 2023 was utter hell, but my stubborn tendency to find the best in situations means I have realized that the year hasn't been all bad. I mean, no fucking brain tumor anymore and my vision returned after surgery. We're fucking in there. And shout out to my surgeons, nurses, etc. for getting me sorted out. Mom was, is, and always will be the motherfucking GOAT for taking care of me the way she does. And most surprisingly, I mentioned in my 2022 hiatus section that I saw some, but not all of the more annoying plot points across leftovers. And would you believe me if I said that I literally woke up from surgery and everything came to me? That big ass tumor was a literal creative block. I'm gonna shit. Had me in a hospital bed straight taking notes in a sauna. But ultimately, 2023 has left me exhausted, bitter, and in absolutely no shape to take on the next leg of leftovers. And it's re-triggered my discomfort and complaining on main due to the feelings that my voice tends to get lost or one-upped in the noise, especially online. And by the end of the year, honestly, I just want to disappear. Step away until I can get my life together. Thus, leading to the decision to take a social media detox for the entirety of 2024, and possibly going forward if need be. 24 anew, and journey ahead. That brings us up to date. Kinda, because we're still 2024, but not a whole lot happened in 2024, mainly because I figured out the source of my seizures was stress, which is why I went on a detox in the first place. Because it was stress, that meant I couldn't do a lot of like brain intensive things like writing or editing videos. And clearly from where we're at in this point in 2025, that's not an issue anymore, thankfully. But drawing wasn't off the table. So you know what I could do in 2024? This. I did it twice, actually. Of course, for one more round of It Wouldn't Be Me If I didn't celebrate Leftovers' 9th anniversary. And so last year I decided to, since I couldn't do literally anything else, I decided to sit down and finally format all of the pages of Leftovers into a book. Printed once again by the goats that mix them. For each value, I made sure each page fit within the book format, which meant going back and like recoloring little bits and pieces if the background didn't stretch or if I needed to extend the background, which honestly I was kind of concerned when I decided to take on the project, but it was actually a lot more calming than I thought it would be. Volume 1 covers chapters 1 through 7 with all the extras mixed in as like the actual parts of the chapter. I'm trying to find 6.5, hold on. Yeah, so like here in chapter 6, instead of saying chapter 6 in, it just says to be continued, and then it continues directly into chapter 6.5, so it's just all part of the same chapter. Now, volume 2 contains chapters 8 through 15 with a small caveat. I decided to just go ahead and put chapter 18 where it's supposed to be, since it's the sequel to chapter 12, which means chapter 18 is chapter 13 and chapter 14 is chapter 15. And so this volume ends with the group arriving at Port Pearl. So yeah, I worked on those volumes around the beginning of 2024 for Leftovers' 9th anniversary, but then towards the end of 2024, I realized that through like just being persistent, probably a little more persistent than it probably should have been, I realized I had kind of trained my brain to like accept small spurts of writing. So of course I immediately got back to work on Leftovers. I'm happy to say I ended up writing out up to chapter 40, which is around the end of the first season. Now when I say I wrote out, it's kind of like I always have a hard time kind of like naming the parts of the scripting process for me. Basically, I'll put a little like diagram on screen of what I'm talking about here. But basically, I have the preparation process and the finishing process. And the preparation process is naming the location where the scenes are going to take place, writing out the scene, and then writing out the actions in the scene. And then the finishing process is writing out the dialogue in the scene. And that's its own process because a lot of my story, like a lot of it takes place within the dialogue. So that's like its own sort of thing. So I have up to chapters 40 all done with the preparation stage. But I have the next 3 chapters of Leftovers just completely finished, which is the Marvel arc. I wanted to have more finished by the time this video got out, but I got distracted fucking Arcane Season 2. So as soon as I get done with this video, get it all uploaded and everything, I'm going right back to writing. And so to just officially announce, Leftovers is on an indefinite hiatus, but not a permanent one. Obviously from, all the writing I've been doing, I am planning on coming back. I just don't know when I'm coming back. I plan to make these volumes available around the time I'm about to come back, like somewhere before, just so people can catch up. But I sell all my books at, production cost, so I'm not making money off a fan project. And these little bitches cost like $50 each, and I'm not gonna do that to y'all. But just know I wanna make them available internationally, and I also want to make a PDF version available online, just in case people don't wanna buy the physicals. I don't know how much money they're gonna cost. I will cross that bridge when I get there. I was also thinking about, making a Patreon or a Ko-Fi if people wanted to support me, but I have to make sure I'm not putting pressure on myself, and I also have to make sure I have things that I feel are actually worth making a whole account for people to support me on. So I will keep you guys updated on that. I think that's it update-wise, save for the fact that I am planning on maintaining a pretty low profile, mainly because I prefer to be perceived by my artwork as opposed to perceived as a person. And I feel like particularly in 2022, I exited lurkerhood very hard and very fast. So yeah, overall, I still plan to keep a low profile, but I will try to keep people updated as, much as I can. That brings us to the end of this video that had a very turbulent process. Like, it's going up late. I just had to accept at some point that it's not going to go up on my birthday or Leftovers anniversary, which, I mean, both of those are on April 26th. As of right now, me recording, that was yesterday. So, but it also kind of, I realized that it also kind of serves as a testament to how far I've come, because I have not only been able to accept that I am not going to make my deadlines, I have also gone through about 20 good scripts and 15 fucking recordings of the script in this video. So looks like we're not raw dogging shit anymore over here. I hope you guys enjoy the video. I hope you enjoyed the walk down memory lane for my returning viewers and readers. And yeah, I will see you when I see you. Bakara signing out.